بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. One of the beautiful things about Surah Yusuf, Surah 12 in the Quran, is that Allah shows us through this story, Allah illustrates to us very clearly through this story that Allah is without question Lateef. Allah is subtle in His plan, Allah is gentle with His servants. ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير. All the way towards the end of the surah, in ayah 100. The surah is just over 100 ayahs. So in ayah 100, this is again towards the end, Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, he mentions Inna Rabbi latifun lima yasha. So he mentions the fact that Allah is Lateef, one of Allah's beautiful names. And it's important to note that this is mentioned at the end, and what this is supposed to cause us to do is to pause, to take a step back and think about what that means, to think about how subtle yet precise Allah's plan was for Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam all the way up until that point, right? Look at the beginning of the story. When he has this dream, he mentions it to his father. One thing leads to another. His brothers, they get all of them except one. They basically, because he had one full brother, Benjamin. Among the others, though, they were jealous of him, and they as we know, they took him, they threw him down the well. Then he's picked up from a traveling caravan. He's sold as a child slave into Egypt, in this foreign land, completely separated from his entire family. He ends up, at least you would think, he ends up in a wealthy household. He ends up in the household of one of the elite. So from one angle, that's a blessing. But then what happens within that household, right? The wife of Al-Aziz, Al-Aziz was the title of the one who adopted him. His wife basically tries to seduce him. He manages to avoid that, but then she and some of her friends, they try to pressure him again into doing something that he didn't want to do. And he turns to Allah. Allah gives him a way out, but ironically, his way out is actually into jail. Look at this part, though. Look at how Lateef Allah is. Think of all of that. In a foreign land, far away from his family, he's being sent to jail for a crime he did not commit. And they knew he was innocent, but they were locking him up anyways for appearances. Allah mentions that وَدَخَلَ مَعَهُ السِّجْنَ فَتَيَانِ. Subhanallah. Allah says, as he was entering prison, as he was entering jail, there were two other young men who were entering with him. Two, subhanallah. And they end up coming to him saying that, we had these dreams, can you help us with their interpretation? Only two. There are two of them. They mention their dreams, and he gives them the honest interpretation. One of the two, the interpretation of the dream was that he was about to die, basically. He was going to die, very soon. And that's what happened. So who's left? One. And the interpretation was that he would press grapes for wine for the king. So Prophet Yusuf mentions to him, mention me to the king, right, so that he can get me out of here. This man, he gets out of jail. And initially he had that intention, right? But Allah mentions that shaitan made him forget. فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانَ ذِكْرَ رَبِّهِ فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعَ سِنِينَ. So Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, he ends up in jail for a few more years. Then that king has a dream, of all things, a dream, not something material, not something tangible. He has a dream. So this is now the dream world coming into play here. He has a dream. No one can interpret it. That one man was there. And he says, oh, I know someone. So he goes to Prophet Yusuf, and one thing leads to another. Prophet Yusuf ends up getting out, and his name is cleared, and he ends up as Al-Aziz, and he's the best man for the job to manage the affairs for the next 14 plus years. So one thing leads to another. There are the 7 years of prosperity, which was predicted from the interpretation of the dream. And then what's expected is what? 7 years of famine. So because of that famine, his brothers, the same ones who threw him in that well many years prior to that, they end up coming to him for help. He recognizes them, they don't recognize him. Right? This tied in with the beginning of the surah. Eventually, they recognize him. أنت يوسف قال أنا يوسف وهذا أخي قد من الله علينا. An amazing response. It's so positive. It's incredibly optimistic. Subhanallah. So eventually, they do recognize him. They end up settling in Egypt. Dad joins them. Their parents basically come and join them. And then all the way at the end, what does he mention? Inna Rabbi latifun lima yasha. There's no doubt my Lord is Lateef in whichever way he wills. Innahu huwa al-alim al-hakim. He is the all-knowing, the all-wise. We're all going through different things. We're all dealing with different things, different challenges. Maybe we can find a silver lining. Maybe we can turn the lemons into lemonade, such that, in the future, at some point, whatever point, we look back and we say, that situation was difficult, but I still derived something good from it. Maybe someone derives a relationship with the Quran on a consistent basis, and they would not have done so had it not been for quarantine, for example. Maybe they had a job where they had to do a ton of commuting, but because of quarantine, they didn't have to commute anymore. And then maybe that job transitions, for example, to becoming fully remote. And they realize, wow, this is such a blessing. I have so much more time with my kids, with my family. This job is the same job. It would not have become remote had it not been for that. And then because it became remote, I don't have to do all that driving, and I can spend more time with family. And because I've been spending more time with family, I'm much happier. They're much happier. SubhanAllah. There's no doubt there are many challenges and struggles, without question. We ask Allah to make things easy for all of us, but let's look for a silver lining. Before I conclude, a dua request for Sister Matana's daughter. Yes, the Sister Matana. Her daughter, Sister Ajwa, she's in the hospital. We ask Allah to heal her. We ask Allah to grant her complete shifa. We ask Allah to make things easy for Sister Matana and her family. A humble request to keep them in your du'as. We ask Allah to turn the hardship into ease. We ask Allah to improve that situation thoroughly. Ya Rabbi Ya Kareem, Amin Ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.